I think it gets a bad rap. I think storytelling also becomes a bit of a dirty word, right? We're making things up. I don't have enough information. I don't have enough to fill in the story. I'm coming up with things to fill in the gaps because I don't have data to support whatever I'm doing, so I'm making things up. And I think more often than not, we default back to the data and the spreadsheets that we're comfortable with because that's what we've lived in. And that's what our teams have pulled together. And that's what we can plant our flag to say we believe in those numbers because that's the data that we've been working on. And I think too often that becomes a bigger challenge than we think it should. And I think I wanted to give you a couple examples of places where that data became a bit of a problem. So I'm going to give you two examples. These are both from teams that I was part of or I led. This is a safe space. These are not all good examples in terms of the output that we produced, but we're all friends and we can talk through it. So the first I would refer to as thorough. It was 47 slides. We sent it 15 minutes before the update with the CEO and the CFO. And you're laughing, but you've all done this before. The key questions were still being answered on slide 44. And it was a completely disorganized, miserable discussion. My team had done a week's worth of work on a monthly update that yielded 47 slides. And we walked out of the meeting after 45 minutes with no answers, no decisions, and a million follow-ups. So all of that work that went into this, which really all was about proving that we had done the work. There was no one in that room that could dispute if you can fill 47 slides with anything meaningful, you did a lot of work. We didn't think about why. We didn't think about what we were doing with all of that, and we certainly didn't ask for any decisions. Take a different team. 7 slides. Now, there's part of me that thinks it looks like we didn't do our jobs, that we weren't explicitly clear with what we were looking for because we're not providing enough. We're not giving enough information behind it. But being 7 slides, we shared it a full day before the meeting with the audience that was listening. They had a chance to review it. We finished 15 minutes early because we had an executive summary and everyone had already read everything that we had sent. And we looked smarter because we looked like we were focused. That deck took 3 days as opposed to 2 weeks. And that was an extra day and a half to review and rethink and revise to make sure that that executive summary was clear. So it was less work and more impactful. And I think that's what's most important, is so much of this in communication is not about the work that you're doing. It's about the thought that we put into the way that we communicate the details of what's been pulled together. And that, if there's one thing coming out of this today, that's what I would challenge you on, is what's the planning and preparation process look like for you? Because most all of us are doing all the data work behind the scenes. That's a core foundational FP&A skill that so many of us know how to do because we were trained and brought up in that way. But I've seen a lot of finance professionals who either couldn't progress in their career or didn't look like they were as talented as they are because they couldn't communicate the details of what they were doing in a clear way that other people realized it. And that becomes so important. The other thing that happens is that the term storytelling, like we said, becomes a dirty word. And it really shouldn't be. It should be the focus of the entire process to start with. It's not a smokescreen for not knowing what you're talking about. It's actually the summary and the summation of a process. The other thing that's important is it doesn't happen if you don't know your numbers. You need to still do the work. In fact, you actually have to do it even further. You have to get a really good grounding in whatever the question is, whatever the proposition was that you're researching, and make sure that you fully back that with data. It's just the way that you pull the right data points in order to get to the answer. It becomes a crutch to send 15-tab spreadsheets, 47 slides, because you don't know where the answer is in all of that. You got asked to go produce the budget versus actuals for the last 3 periods. So you went and ran that out of the planning tool. You supported that with a million different comments that you thought were relevant. You dumped it all in an email and you sent it off. And you're relying on someone else to tease out the things that answer the question for whatever they had. instead of teeing up exactly what you want them to think. And that's the other piece that I would mention in all of this is we as FP&A people become so much more powerful when you can drive the discussion to where you want it to go. If you tee up the relevant bullet points, the pieces of information that are most important, you're going to be able to convey the message and the direction that you want that person to take away, because those are the things that they'll see fastest. And we know as we deal with executives, CEOs and CFOs, they will benefit from the time savings that you're giving them by not having to open that spreadsheet. I've worked for CFOs that wouldn't open the spreadsheet. They would simply send it back to you and tell me why I need to pay attention. So avoiding that crutch of sending extra just because it seems like it's better, but really it's just trying to skip a step is not ideal. The other thing that you can do as you're working through a project like this is to think really critically about what is the story that you're trying to tell. So if I'm pulling the prior 3 periods of budget versus actuals, what is it that I ultimately am trying to prove or disprove with that data? And as you think through that, talk to the people around you that are involved with this as well. Are there budget owners? Are there stakeholders? Are there people that are somehow involved with the information that you're providing to test to see if the hypothesis of the story that you're building actually makes sense? Because it's a way for you to start to road test the messaging to see if it answers the question. As you start to do that, you'll get more and more detail and more specifics about the few things that I refer to here as the golden tickets. But they're the few things that will really prove the point you want to make and be able to find the stuff that will actually matter to the audience that you're trying to respond to.